Hi, I'm Donna Jordan from Jordan Fabrics. I have a new pattern I've been working on, got it all sketched out, and I'm calling it Cathedral Stars. It has a folded and rolled technique in the corners here, and that's what makes these flowery stars show up. It's a really fun pattern to do, it's very easy, and I'm going to show you exactly how to make it. So let's get some fabrics and get started. We're going to use 5 different fabrics for this pattern. So we've got a background, we need 4 yards for that. We've got a medium colored print, 1 3/4 yards, a nice dark 3/8, sashing 1 yard, cornerstones 1/8. Now you don't have to remember all these numbers because we have a free pattern. It's the first link right below the video. Now the whole quilt is going to be made up of just these 2 blocks. And instead of cutting a bunch of individual pieces, we're going to make them using strip units. So the first fabric we're going to cut is this background, and we need 2 pieces 5 inches wide and 3 pieces 7 1/4 inches wide. Now for our medium print, we're going to need 7 strips at 2 3/4 and 3 strips at 7 1/4. Now we need to cut some of the dark accent fabric. We need 3 strips cut at 2 3/4 inches wide. Now we're going to take our strips and we're going to make some strip units. Now there's 3 different strip units we're going to do. The first one has the 5-inch light, and it has 2 of these medium pieces, 1 on each side. So let's open this up. And open this up, put the raw edges together, and use a careful 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down here. And you want to be careful that you don't stretch either the top or the bottom. So just lay them gently on top of each other and sew right along the edge there. So just stitch right off the end, and then we're going to press the seam allowance toward the darker fabric. We're always going to press all of the seam allowances away from that white. So I'm opening it up with my hands, and I'm just drawing my finger, either the pad or your fingernail if you like, right down that seam, and it opens it up and it flattens it out, and it makes it really easy to iron later on. Now we're going to add the second strip to the opposite side using the same method. So again, finger press away from the light. Now the second strip unit we need has the 7 1/4 inch white and 1 of these medium strips. And that's all we need, is just these 2. Now the third strip unit has the 7 1/4 inch medium and the 2 3/4 dark. And again, there's only 1 strip that goes on the side here. Now this strip unit, the seam allowance is going to get pressed toward the medium color. I have all of the strip units made. Now we needed 2 of these guys, 3 of these ones, and 3 of these ones. And before we cut these, we're going to want to iron each one. Even though we finger press this, it's not flat enough to move on. We need to use our iron. So I've got this nice flat ironing board, and it's got a straight edge, and I'm going to smooth this out with my hands. Then I'm going to take a big yardstick. I call it a yardstick. It's a 4-foot metal stick. And I'm going to make sure this is straight on here, because it is possible to lay this on your ironing board and have it curved, and we don't want it curved. So smooth it out, make sure it's straight, then use a dry iron first, and then use some steam. I have all 3 strip units ironed up. So we've got 3 different kinds, and they're going to get subcut, but they all get cut to different widths. So let's start with this one here that has a piece on each side of it. I've got 2 of these, and I can cut them at the same time. I'm going to layer them up, but I'm going to stagger it a little bit so that I don't have too much bulk in any one spot. So I don't want these seam allowances right on top of themselves. Now this one is going to get cut 5 inches wide. So I'm going to neaten it off here. And then I'm going to cut this to 5-inch segments the whole way down. So we need 12 of these strip units. Now the next one we're going to cut is this guy here with the big white piece and the narrow medium, and these are going to get cut to 7 1/4 inches wide. We needed 12 of these also, and then the last strip unit gets cut into 2 3/4 inch pieces. We need 36 of these. And now we are ready to put together our blocks. The first block gets 1 of these and 2 of these, so we're just going to turn that one around. And that one's going to go right there, and the seams are going to line up perfectly, and they're even going in opposite directions. The seam allowance is there, so it's going to be really easy to match these. Finger press the seam towards the darker fabric. And now we'll put that guy on. So that's our first block. Now the second block gets 1 of these and 1 of these. And again, everything matches up. You can stitch it on really fast. And those seam allowances nesting there again. Again, press the seam towards the darker fabric, and that's all you have to do. We need 12 of that block, and we need 12 of that block. I've got all the patchwork blocks done. Now we need some 6-inch squares for those folded corners that go in the blocks. Now we need to take each square and iron it in half along its diagonal. And give it a good steam pressing. Now for the fun part. Each block is going to get 2 of these folded squares, and they're going to go onto the corners opposite each other, the corners that don't have the accent color. So I'm going to line this up with the raw edges, and I'm going to stitch right along the edge about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, pretty close to the edge there. Get my needle up. And this is just to anchor it down while we do our folding and rolling. Now let's do this other corner. And you can actually stitch it on and fold and roll all in one operation. So let me show you. I'm going to stitch it on. And now when I get to this far corner here, I'm going to pivot around and I'm going to roll this back. Now I don't want to have it rolled back too close to the edge because that could get caught in my seam allowance. So roll it so that it's at least 1/4 inch away from the edge there. And we're rolling it back till most of this block shows, and now I'm going to edge stitch right along that rolled part. So smooth it out with your fingers and just stitch very close to the edge. It's kind of fun. It's all on the bias here, so it stretches a little, and that's why it rolls so nice. So go right along that one edge. And this is optional, but I like to stitch this part down. I think it will make the quilt flatter, and then my hopping foot when I quilt it won't get caught here. So I'm going to edge stitch on this side as well. It's very easy to do. Do a little back tack right there. And look how fun that is. You got a nice little wedge, nice little curve. So it's important to make sure that you don't start your fold too close to the edge. You want to have a good 1/4 inch there. And the same thing when you get to the other end. That way, when you sew your blocks together, you won't have a lot of extra bulk in the corner. So same thing on this end here. Don't fold it over like that. Just about there. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these onto all of my blocks. All of my blocks are stitched up. I went ahead and steam pressed them nice and flat. And I've cut the sashing and cornerstones 2-inch squares, 2 by 9.5. And those numbers are in the pattern, but let me show you what this is going to look like when we start laying it out. So we're going to have 2 of these guys, these what I'm going to call half blocks. Then we're going to have 2 of these whole blocks and 2 more half blocks. Then we're going to have 4 whole blocks. And a couple more half blocks here. And that's half the quilt right there. And then we will just fill in with these sashing pieces. They're going to go between all of these blocks. And then right in the middle of here is going to be one of the yellow cornerstones. Of course, it'll look a lot neater when we've got them sewn together and everything is nice and square. So I'm going to continue to lay it out so you can get a better idea of what the whole quilt looks like. There. All the patchwork is laid out. We've got some holes in the corners, and all we have to do is get some 11-inch squares here. And these are going to go in all the corners, and these are going to make a nice negative space for us to do some quilting on. So I'm probably going to use a colored thread on this one so that the quilting will show. And I'm going to get everything stitched up. I'll probably put a border or 2 around it. It looks like that would frame it very nicely. And then I will get it onto the quilting machine. I've got the quilt all loaded up on the machine, and now it's time to pick a thread color. So I normally want the thread to recede and blend in, but I've got this nice large white space here, so I want the thread to show a little bit. Now this light blue I thought was going to be perfect, but you can hardly see it. So I picked a couple other blues here. That one I think is too dark. Even this one, it's really going to show. Now the yellow, that's very pretty, but look, it's going to blend right in and we're not going to see it at all. But this one, it's a nice light blue. We're going to see it a little bit, but it's not going to fight too much. So we'll use this one. For the quilting pattern, I'm going to use chestnut swirls. The shape of this, with just a little bit of a curve, seems to echo those folded corners, those cathedral window corners that we have in the quilt. So this is going to have an all-over pattern that's going to fill up all that negative space in the solid white areas. I have the Cathedral Stars quilt all done. I'm very happy with how this turned out. I honestly didn't know how easy it would be to make one that looks like it has these curves without having to sew any curves. So these rolled parts, stitched on both sides, that's what makes that curved area, and you can see big circles as you look around. Having all this quilting around here really helps on a very solid white background, because if you quilt it in white and you don't use a colored thread, it shows every little piece of lint, but having just a little bit of color shadowing in that thread, it gives it texture, and it helps hide any lint you might get on your quilt. Now on the back, I used grunge, and you can really see the quilting pattern there. So it shows up quite nicely. I used the same binding that I used in our medium pieces here. The sashing cornerstones, they're a little bit smaller than these here, and I think that makes the patchwork look a little bit better. All in all, a very satisfying quilt to make, much easier than it looks. We hope you enjoyed watching our tutorial today on how to make the Cathedral Stars. Now, we're having another giveaway. You might have seen this video. This is called hexagon pinwheels, and I made it up with K-Facet jelly roll strips. Really fun to make, but today you could win it. So all you have to do is enter the giveaway by clicking the link below that says giveaway and put in your email address and your name, and you might be the next lucky winner. Now, if you like watching our tutorials and you want to help support us, the best thing you can do is subscribe to our YouTube channel. That would really help us out. Happy quilting!